The alien warrior came from a world where strength defined everything. Their species, born into a relatively calm and predictable planet, had evolved for one purpose: war. They were large, towering over most other species, with bodies built for brute force. Their bones were dense, their muscles thick, and their skin could withstand a myriad of physical attacks. But beneath that invulnerability was fragility. Their ability to heal was slow and imperfect. Wounds took weeks, sometimes months, to fully close, and infections were a common threat. Yet in their eyes, this didn't matter. To their species, the only true form of power was the strength to crush opposition, not the ability to survive injuries. They believed in the supremacy of their physical form, a belief rooted in millennia of conquering weaker species. This superiority complex was so ingrained that they barely even considered the possibility that a smaller, frailer species could ever be a match. It was in their bones to think this way. Why would they think otherwise when they had never been proven wrong? They considered themselves the peak of evolution, viewing other species as fragile, expendable, and inconsequential, especially those from so-called Deathworlds. The concept of Deathworlds was known throughout the galaxy, but to the alien warrior and their kin, it was more of a myth, a joke even. Earth, classified as a Deathworld, was just another backwater planet filled with creatures forced to survive in harsher conditions. Sure, life on such a planet required adaptability, but in the aliens' eyes, adaptation was just a poor substitute for real strength. Species from Deathworlds were often smaller, more prone to injury, and always seemed to be on the defensive. These creatures had developed unique traits to survive their hostile environments, but they were seen as primitive, relying on cunning or trickery rather than the raw power that the alien species valued. Humans, in particular, were almost laughable. Their stature was unimposing, their skin vulnerable to even minor wounds. They weren't covered in thick plates of natural armor like some species, nor did they have regenerative capabilities that could restore a limb overnight. To the alien warrior, humans were just another weak, fragile species that, in a real fight, would crumble under pressure. That's how they viewed all Deathworlders. They were small, they healed slowly, and their endurance was unimpressive. What could possibly make them special? Then came the first encounter. It wasn't an epic battle, just a skirmish, a mere test of the aliens' abilities against a group of human soldiers. The alien barely considered the human forces a threat. The initial clash was brief, and the alien warrior found themselves face to face with one of the humans. The human was quick, but not quick enough. The alien struck the human down with ease, landing a blow that left the human sprawled out on the ground, blood seeping from their wounds. The alien warrior didn't think twice about it. The human was down, bleeding profusely. From the alien's perspective, the fight was over. No creature could survive injuries like that. To their kind, a wound of such magnitude would mean death within hours, maybe days if infection set in. The alien had seen it happen countless times to enemies and even comrades. Injuries that broke skin, damaged muscle, or caused significant blood loss were a near-certain death sentence. It was the natural order. Those too weak to survive such damage deserved to die. It was evolution's way of sorting out the strong from the weak. So the alien left the human there on the battlefield, assuming they would succumb to their injuries. In the alien's mind, it wasn't worth wasting energy on a creature that had already been defeated. The warrior moved on, confident that the human was no longer a threat. As the night fell, the alien expected the human's body to be nothing more than a memory by the time dawn broke. But that wasn't what happened. As the sun rose, the alien, making their rounds on the battlefield, was surprised to find the human still there. Not only alive, but conscious. The human had dragged themselves to a safer spot, their wounds partially closed, though still severe. They were breathing, albeit labored, and had managed to stay alive through the night despite the odds. The alien paused, observing this strange sight. It didn't make sense. A being so fragile, so clearly damaged, should have succumbed to the injuries long ago. The alien dismissed it at first, thinking that maybe the injuries hadn't been as severe as they initially appeared. Maybe it was just luck that the human had survived. It wasn't unheard of for creatures to cling to life in their final hours, even when death was inevitable. But the aliens' curiosity was piqued. They decided to observe from a distance, still convinced that the human was living on borrowed time. As the hours passed, something remarkable happened. The human, despite the continued bleeding and pain, started to move. Slowly at first, but then more deliberately. They weren't healing in the traditional sense that the alien species would understand, but their body was clearly fighting off the damage in a way that defied the aliens' expectations. By midday, the human had even managed to stand, albeit shakily, using nearby debris for support. The alien couldn't believe it. In their species, even the smallest of wounds could leave a warrior bedridden for days. A wound like the one the human had sustained would have killed any of the alien's kin within hours. Yet here was this human, standing, moving, and showing signs of recovery. The alien was confused, almost offended by the human's defiance of what they believed to be natural law. How could a species so physically unimpressive endure such damage? It wasn't just the human's body that fascinated the alien, but their will to survive. The human's determination, even in the face of mortal injury, was something the alien had never seen before. To the alien, survival was a matter of physical capability. If you were strong enough, you lived. If not, you died. Simple. But the humans seemed to operate under a different set of rules. Their body shouldn't have survived, but somehow, through sheer force of will, they continued to push forward, refusing to succumb to their injuries. The alien watched as the human bandaged their wounds, using whatever materials they could find. It was crude, but effective. The alien realized then that humans, Deathworlders, weren't just survivors because of their biology, but because of their refusal to give in, even when logic and reason dictated they should. Still, the alien clung to their belief in their own superiority. This human survival was impressive, but surely it was an anomaly, a fluke. There was no way a species this fragile could truly pose a threat to the alien warrior's kind. They would heal, they would rest, and the next time they met, the human wouldn't be so lucky. That was the natural order, after all. Or so the alien thought. The alien had expected the human to be dead by morning. Their own kind would never have survived such severe injuries. But when the first light of dawn crept across the horizon, the human was still there, breathing barely but alive. The alien warriors stared in disbelief, the cold certainty they had felt the night before beginning to waver. How could something so fragile cling to life after such a devastating blow? For their species, such wounds would have been fatal within hours. Infection, blood loss, either one would have done the job. But this human, this Deathworlder, was defying all logic. The human stirred, groaning in pain but conscious. Blood still stained the ground beneath them, but the alien noticed something strange. Some of the wounds that had seemed fatal the night before had already begun to close. Not completely, but the bleeding had slowed and the jagged edges of torn flesh were knitting themselves together. The alien narrowed their eyes, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. Healing at this speed was unheard of in their species. Even the most minor cuts would take days to fully close, and yet this human, riddled with gashes and wounds, was already showing signs of recovery. It wasn't just the healing that caught the alien off guard. It was the way the human moved. Slowly, painfully, they shifted, pushing themselves upright despite the agony that must have been coursing through their body. Every movement looked like it should hurt. No, it did hurt. The human's face was etched with pain, but they kept going, refusing to stay down. The alien watched as the human tore a strip of fabric from their own clothing, crudely wrapping it around one of the deeper cuts to stem the bleeding. There was no medical kit, no advanced technology to assist, just a piece of cloth and the human's sheer will to survive. The alien couldn't help but feel a growing sense of confusion. They had assumed the human was done for, that any moment now they would collapse again, this time for good. But that moment never came. Instead, the human continued to fight for every breath, every inch of movement, refusing to let their body give out. The alien's mind raced, trying to rationalize what they were witnessing. Maybe the human hadn't been as injured as they first thought. Perhaps the wounds were superficial, and the human had simply been lucky. Yes, that had to be it. No species could endure this kind of damage and recover so quickly. But even as the alien tried to cling to this explanation, doubts crept in. The wounds had been deep, too deep to be shrugged off so easily. They couldn't deny what they had seen: flesh torn open, blood pooling on the ground, yet here the human was, not only alive but healing. It didn't make sense. The alien had fought countless battles, seen many species fall to injuries far less severe than what this human had endured. Their own kind would be lying motionless by now, their bodies succumbing to the damage. Yet this human, a Deathworlder, was still going. As the hours passed, the alien continued to observe, unable to tear their eyes away from the spectacle of resilience unfolding before them. The human didn't just survive, they adapted. Each time they faltered, they found a way to press on. Their movements were slow, deliberate, conserving energy, but there was an undeniable determination in every step they took. The alien had never seen anything like it. It wasn't just that the human was healing faster than they had thought possible, it was the fact that they were still standing, still pushing forward, despite everything their body had been through. The alien's mind wrestled with the implications. They had always believed that strength came from physical power, from the ability to overpower and dominate. But this was something else entirely. This was a strength that didn't rely on brute force. It was a strength of endurance, of sheer willpower, something that couldn't be measured in muscle or size. And for the first time, the alien began to wonder if maybe they had underestimated these Deathworlders. But even as that thought crossed their mind, they quickly pushed it aside. No, this had to be an anomaly, a freak occurrence. One human surviving against the odds didn't change the fact that their species was physically inferior. They weren't as strong, as fast, or as durable as the alien's kind. This human was just lucky, nothing more. The alien couldn't let themselves believe otherwise. It would be too disruptive to everything they had been taught, everything they knew to be true. Yet, the seed of doubt had been planted. As much as they tried to dismiss it, they couldn't shake the image of the human standing there, battered but unbroken. The healing process alone was baffling. By the second day, the human's wounds were visibly smaller, the bleeding had almost completely stopped, and while the pain was still evident, it was clear the worst had passed. The alien had never seen such a rapid recovery in any species, let alone one they had considered weak. The aliens' own biology was different, of course. Their bodies were strong but slow to heal. A wound that size would have incapacitated them for days, possibly weeks. Infection would have set in almost immediately, and their immune system would have struggled to fight it off. But the human's body seemed to be working on overdrive, mending itself at a pace that defied the aliens' understanding of biology. They found themselves torn between awe and disbelief. On the one hand, the human's resilience was undeniable. On the other, it contradicted everything the alien believed about strength and survival. They tried to rationalize it again, telling themselves that this human was an outlier, that the rest of the species couldn't possibly possess the same level of resilience. It had to be a one-off, a stroke of luck that would never be replicated. Yet, deep down, the alien knew that wasn't the case. As much as they tried to deny it, respect for the human began to grow. Not admiration, not yet, but a begrudging respect. The human had survived where most would have perished. That was worthy of some recognition, even if the alien wasn't ready to fully acknowledge it. Still, they couldn't help but cling to their own sense of superiority. They told themselves that this human's endurance was impressive, yes, but ultimately irrelevant. Their own species was still stronger, more advanced, and in a direct confrontation, the outcome would be the same. The human would fall. It was inevitable. And yet, as the alien watched the human, still standing, still fighting through the pain, they couldn't help but feel a twinge of uncertainty. If this was just one human, what were the rest like? Was this level of resilience unique, or was it something ingrained in all Deathworlders? The alien didn't have the answers, but the questions gnawed at the edges of their mind, refusing to be silenced. For now, they would continue to believe in their own strength, in their species' superiority. But the humans' defiance, their refusal to die, had planted a seed of doubt that the alien couldn't ignore. And as they continued to observe, that seed began to grow. The battle had dragged on longer than the alien had anticipated. What should have been a quick confrontation had turned into a grueling test of endurance, and the human still hadn't faltered. The alien could feel the fatigue creeping into their muscles, their body growing heavy with each passing hour. They had been trained for battles of strength, quick, decisive strikes, and overwhelming power. But this was something else entirely. It wasn't about raw force anymore. It had become a war of attrition, a contest of who could outlast the other. The alien had believed that the human would be the first to crumble under the weight of their injuries and the sheer exhaustion of the prolonged struggle. They had seen the human take blows that would have incapacitated anyone in the alien species. A slash across the chest, deep and ragged, that should have been fatal, a broken arm, twisted at an unnatural angle. Countless bruises and cuts that littered the human's body, each one a testament to the violence of their conflict. And yet, despite it all, the human kept moving. The alien couldn't understand it. Every time the human seemed on the verge of collapse, they found a way to push through the pain, to keep fighting. It wasn't just the physical endurance that was baffling, it was the human's sheer willpower. The alien had always considered battles to be a test of strength and skill, but this was something entirely different. The human was refusing to quit, no matter how much damage they had taken. It was as though giving up wasn't even an option for them. Each blow that landed on the human's body seemed to fuel something deeper within them, a determination that defied the alien's understanding of combat. What disturbed the alien most wasn't the human's ability to heal, although that in itself was a shock. The rapid recovery from what should have been debilitating wounds was already beyond what the alien could comprehend. No, what unsettled the alien was the way the human's mind stayed sharp, focused, despite the agony they must have been in. The alien could see it in the human's eyes, a clarity, a drive that refused to be dimmed by the pain. The alien had never seen this before. In their experience, warriors broke when their bodies broke. The mind followed the body. It was inevitable. But not with this human. Even as the alien landed blow after blow, seeing the human's body weaken, seeing the blood spill, they couldn't help but notice that the human's spirit never wavered. There was no fear, no hesitation, just an unyielding resolve that bordered on madness. How could anyone continue in such a state? How could someone push their body so far past its limits and still keep fighting? The alien could feel their own strength draining. The battle had taken its toll. Their muscles were aching, their limbs growing slower with each passing moment. The once confident strikes they had delivered at the beginning of the fight were now sluggish, each one requiring more effort than the last. Their species was built for short bursts of overwhelming power, not for long, drawn-out struggles like this. They weren't used to fighting on empty reserves, and it showed. In contrast, the humans seemed to be running on something other than physical strength. It was almost as if they had tapped into a reserve of energy that the alien couldn't understand. It wasn't physical, it was mental. The human's eyes never lost focus, their movements, though slower, were still deliberate, still calculated. The alien could feel the weight of their own exhaustion pressing down on them, but the human seemed to be holding something in reserve, something the alien couldn't tap into. The alien had fought many battles before, but none like this. They had never faced an opponent who refused to go down, no matter how many times they were hit, no matter how many wounds they sustained. It was starting to become clear that this was not just a contest of bodies, but of minds. The human's ability to endure pain, to push through exhaustion, was unlike anything the alien had ever encountered. They had always believed that the body dictated the outcome of a fight, but this human was proving that the mind had just as much, if not more, control over the battle. The alien's own body was betraying them now. They could feel the strain in every movement, each step a reminder that they were nearing their limit. They had never been in a fight this long before, had never had to dig so deep just to keep standing. Their species was powerful, yes, but they weren't built for endurance. Their muscles, once their greatest asset, were now starting to fail them. Every punch felt slower, every kick less precise. And as the alien's strength waned, they began to realize just how much they had underestimated the human. What the alien had thought was weakness, frailty, was actually something far more dangerous. The human didn't need to overpower the alien in a traditional sense. They didn't need to land a knockout blow or crush their opponent with sheer force. No, the human's power lay in their ability to endure, to outlast. Every moment the battle dragged on, the human became stronger in comparison, not because their physical wounds were healing faster, but because their will to continue was unshakable. The alien could feel it now, fear. It crept in slowly, at first just a whisper at the back of their mind. But as the fight wore on, that whisper grew louder, more insistent. What if they couldn't win? What if they had already lost and they just didn't know it yet? They had always been so sure of their species' superiority, of their own invincibility in battle, but this human was challenging everything the alien had believed about strength and victory. The alien had thought they understood the human, had thought that after seeing their resilience, they had grasped the depth of their opponent's endurance. But they had been wrong. This wasn't just about physical strength or even speed of healing. This was about something deeper, something primal. The human wasn't just surviving, they were thriving in this battle of attrition. The longer the fight went on, the more the alien realized that the human wasn't going to stop. No matter how many wounds they inflicted, no matter how much damage the human took, they kept going. For the first time in their life, the alien felt vulnerable. It wasn't a physical vulnerability, though the pain in their muscles and the growing fatigue were real enough. It was something deeper, a recognition that they had misunderstood the nature of power and endurance. The alien had always believed that strength came from the body, from the ability to dominate through force. But the human was showing them that true strength lay in the mind, in the will to survive no matter the cost. As the alien's body began to fail, they couldn't help but feel a growing respect for the human, mingled with fear. How could they win a fight against an opponent who refused to quit? The alien was powerful, yes, but their power was finite. The human, however, seemed to draw from a well of resilience that had no bottom, no end, and that realization was terrifying. The alien knew they had underestimated the human. What they had thought was weakness was actually an unyielding strength that their species could never hope to match. The alien's own body was giving out, but the human was still standing, still fighting. And in that moment, the alien realized that this battle was over, even if they hadn't fallen yet. The human should not have survived. Everything the alien warrior knew, every law of biology, every experience from their long years of battle told them that the human was supposed to be dead by now. But they weren't. In fact, the human wasn't just surviving, they were pushing through conditions that would have crushed any other species. Each moment, the alien expected the human to collapse from exhaustion, from the mounting injuries that had torn through their body. The human did something unthinkable, they kept going. The alien had fought longer than they ever had before, and it showed in the burning ache of their muscles, the sluggishness of their movements, and the increasing fog of exhaustion clouding their mind. They were running on empty, yet the human seemed to be thriving in these harsh conditions. There was no rational explanation for it. The human's wounds were many, and some were still fresh, yet somehow they were pushing forward, their determination as strong as it had been at the start. For the alien, this was beyond comprehension. In their culture, in their experience, endurance was linked directly to strength. When the body gave out, so did the will. The alien's own strength had always been a point of pride, but now they were faced with something far more terrifying than sheer physical power, a being who refused to submit, whose body and mind seemed to work in perfect concert to defy all odds. What the alien had first seen as human fragility now revealed itself as something far more profound, a hidden strength. With every passing moment, the alien could feel the shift within themselves. There had been a time not long ago when they believed their superiority was unshakable, when they had thought of humans as weak, inconsequential beings. But now that belief crumbled in the face of reality. The alien had witnessed something extraordinary, something they could not explain but could no longer deny. Humans were not fragile. They were not weak. What they had taken as a vulnerability was, in truth, a profound resilience. The realization struck the alien hard, an unsettling truth that rattled the core of their understanding. This human, this Deathworlder, was surviving and even thriving in conditions that would have broken the alien long ago. The injuries the human had sustained would have killed their own kind, and yet here the human stood alive, breathing, and more than that, continuing. This wasn't just survival, this was adaptation at its most extreme. The human had endured the pain, the exhaustion, the overwhelming odds, and had come out the other side stronger for it. The alien could no longer deny it. They had been wrong. Their entire understanding of strength of survival had been built on a narrow and incomplete view. The human was not just resilient, they were something more, something the alien species could never hope to be. There was a quality to humans, a depth of endurance and adaptability, that was beyond the aliens' capacity to grasp. They had always believed in the superiority of their physical strength, but now that seemed like a hollow concept, a narrow view of what it meant to be truly powerful. What the alien had witnessed was not just the human's ability to heal quickly or to withstand physical damage. It was their will. Their mental fortitude was something the alien could scarcely comprehend. The human had taken blow after blow, injury after injury, yet their spirit had never wavered. There was no moment of hesitation, no sign of surrender, only a relentless drive to continue, to survive. This was something far more terrifying than brute strength. It was a resilience that came from within, something that could not be beaten down by mere physical force.